Everyone accuses Jimin of betraying Jungkook, but his cruelest choices hide a dangerous secret. He became the villain to keep Jungkook alive. Jimin, if you take one more step toward that door, I will shoot you myself. The gunshot that followed shattered the silence before anyone could breathe, sending a spray of glass across the marble floor as Jimin stood perfectly still beneath the cold white lights, his black coat soaked from the rain and his eyes fixed on Jungkook, as though the weapon pointed at his chest meant nothing. You already betrayed him, the man behind the gun snarled. Now tell us where Jungkook is. Jimin slowly raised his hands, but there was no fear on his face. There was something worse, acceptance. Around him, 6 men stood with weapons drawn, their expressions twisted by anger and suspicion. On the giant screen behind them, security footage played again and again. Jimin entering a dark warehouse, Jimin handing a silver case to a stranger, Jimin walking away while Jungkook was dragged into a waiting vehicle. The footage had already become a verdict. Everyone had seen it. Everyone believed it. Everyone except the one person Jimin desperately needed to believe him. Jungkook, he trusted you, one of the men said. He called you his brother. Jimin's jaw tightened, his fingers curled slowly against his palms. I know. Then why did you sell him? Jimin looked at the screen. His own face stared back at him like the face of a stranger, cold, calculating, guilty. Because I had to, the room erupted. Had to, someone shouted. You call that an excuse? Jimin said nothing. He had learned long ago that the truth could sometimes be more dangerous than a lie, especially when the truth had Jungkook's name written across every page. The door at the far end suddenly opened. Every weapon turned. Jungkook stood there. His shirt was torn at the shoulder, a thin line of blood running from his temple down his cheek. His breathing was uneven, but his eyes were clear. Alive, Jimin's heart stopped. For one brief second, the mask almost fell. Jungkook. The name escaped Jimin's lips like a prayer. Jungkook stared at him. There was pain in his eyes, but not surprise, that frightened Jimin more than anything. So it was true, Jungkook whispered. Jimin swallowed. Jungkook, listen to me. Don't. Jungkook raised a trembling hand. Don't say my name like that. Jimin froze. He had imagined this moment hundreds of times. He had imagined Jungkook screaming. He had imagined Jungkook punching him. He had imagined Jungkook hatting him. But he had never imagined the emptiness in Jungkook's voice. It was the sound of someone who had already mourned a person who was still standing in front of him. I saw the footage, Jungkook continued. I saw you give them the case. You weren't supposed to see it. Why? Jimin's eyes hardened. Because you would have come after me. Maybe I should have, and then you would be dead. The words came out too quickly, too honestly. Jungkook stared at him. Jimin immediately looked away. What did you just say? Nothing. No, you said I'd be dead. Jimin's silence answered him. Jungkook stepped closer. Jimin, what did you do? Jimin could hear the rain hammering against the windows. He could smell smoke from the damaged electrical system. Somewhere beneath the floor, an alarm pulsed like a heartbeat. Jimin looked at Jungkook and remembered another night, months earlier, when Jungkook had fallen asleep on the couch with one hand wrapped around Jimin's sleeve because he was afraid of being left alone. Jimin remembered how Jungkook always tapped his fingers against a table whenever he lied. He remembered how Jungkook hated thunderstorms, but pretended not to. He remembered every small thing because remembering was the only way Jimin could convince himself that what he was doing had a purpose. I betrayed you, Jimin said quietly. Jungkook's face changed. Why? Because you were becoming their target. So you became the target instead. Jimin smiled bitterly. Something like that. You destroyed everything. I know. You made everyone hate you. I know. You made me hate you. That sentence finally broke something inside Jimin. His eyes lowered. That was the point. Jungkook stared at him as if he had been struck. Jimin forced himself to continue. If you hated me, you would stop following me. If you believed I had betrayed you, you would stay away. If everyone thought I was the villain, no one would look closely enough to notice what I was actually protecting. Protecting what? Jimin looked directly at him. You. Silence swallowed the room. Jungkook shook his head slowly. No, Jungkook, no, don't turn this into some heroic sacrifice. His voice cracked. You don't get to hurt me and call it protection. Jimin flinched. You're right. Jungkook's eyes filled with tears, but he refused to let them fall. Then tell me the truth. Jimin looked toward the security cameras. His expression changed instantly. The warmth disappeared. The softness disappeared. The frightened friend disappeared. What remained was the cold man everyone had learned to fear. The truth is that someone inside this building has been feeding them information for 11 months. Jungkook stopped breathing. Jimin continued. Every move you made, every place you stayed. Every person you trusted, they knew. Who? I don't know. You expect me to believe that? No. Jimin reached inside his coat. Every weapon in the room immediately pointed toward him. Don't move. Jimin ignored them and pulled out a small black recorder. He placed it on the floor. This is why I gave them the silver case. Jungkook stared at the recorder. What's inside? Jimin's eyes met his. A lie. What? They think the case contains the location of the person they're hunting. Jimin's voice became quieter, but the case contained something else. A sudden explosion shook the building. The lights went out. Darkness swallowed everyone. Gunfire erupted. Jimin moved instantly. He grabbed Jungkook and pulled him behind a concrete pillar as bullets tore through the room. Jungkook stumbled against him. Jimin, stay down. What is happening? They found us. Who? Jimin looked into the darkness. Somewhere above them, footsteps raced across the ceiling. Then came a familiar voice through the emergency speakers. Calm, distorted, almost amused. Jimin, you were always clever. Jimin's face went pale. Jungkook noticed immediately. You know that voice. Jimin did not answer. The voice continued. But you made one mistake. A pause. You protected Jungkook instead of protecting yourself. Jimin closed his eyes for 1 second. When he opened them, there was terror behind his expression for the first time. Jungkook, he whispered. When I tell you to run, don't look back. Why? Because whoever is speaking, Jimin tightened his grip around Jungkook's wrist, is the person who taught me how to become a monster. The voice vanished, but the silence it left behind was somehow worse than the gunfire. Jimin kept one hand around Jungkook's wrist, feeling the frantic pulse beneath his fingers, while smoke crawled across the ceiling and emergency lights flickered red through the darkness. Run, Jimin whispered. Jungkook didn't move, not without you. Jimin looked at him, and for the first time that night, the carefully constructed mask cracked. Jungkook, please, you don't get to say please now. Jungkook's voice trembled with anger. You disappeared for 6 months. You lied to me. You let me believe you had betrayed me. You made me hate you. Jimin's eyes dropped. I know. Then you're going to explain everything. If we survive the next 5 minutes. Another bullet struck the pillar beside them. Jimin immediately pulled Jungkook lower. Stay behind me. I'm not hiding behind you. For once, Jungkook, do exactly what I say. Why? Jungkook whispered. Because I have spent 6 months becoming someone you could hate so that you could survive. Jimin's voice shook. Don't make me fail now. Jungkook stared at him, unable to answer. Then Jimin moved. He grabbed a fallen flashlight, threw it toward the opposite corridor, and the armed men immediately fired toward the light. Jimin pulled Jungkook in the opposite direction. They ran through a narrow service hallway filled with smoke and the sharp smell of burned wiring. Jungkook's shoes slipped on the wet floor, but Jimin caught him before he fell. Are you hurt? I'm fine. You're bleeding. It's nothing. You always say that. Jimin stopped for half a second. And you always pretend you believe me. They continued running until they reached a steel door. Jimin entered a code. Nothing happened. He entered it again. Still nothing. Jungkook looked over his shoulder. Jimin, I know. They're coming. Jimin stared at the keypad. The code was changed. Can you override it? Yes. How long? 30 seconds. We don't have 30 seconds. Jimin pulled a small tool from his pocket. Then make sure they don't reach us. Jungkook stared at the approaching shadows. He had never been trained for this. Jimin knew that, yet Jungkook picked up a broken metal bar anyway. 10 seconds, Jimin muttered. Jimin, 9, Jimin, 8. Jungkook looked at him. I'm sorry. Jimin stopped. For what? For believing them. Jimin's fingers froze over the keypad. You had every reason to. No, I didn't. Jungkook, I should have trusted you. Jimin looked away because he couldn't afford to let Jungkook see his eyes. 7. The footsteps became louder. 6. Jungkook stepped closer. Look at me. Jimin didn't. Jimin, 5, please. Jimin finally looked at him. Jungkook's eyes were wet. If you die tonight, I don't want your last memory of me to be the person who hated you. Something inside Jimin broke. 4. I don't hate you. 3. I never stopped caring about you. 2. Jimin's hand shook. 1. The door opened. Jimin grabbed Jungkook and pulled him inside. The steel door slammed shut just as bullets punched through the outer wall. They ran down a staircase and emerged into an underground parking garage. Dozens of empty spaces stretched beneath flickering lights. Rainwater dripped from exposed pipes, creating a strange rhythm in the silence. Jimin finally released Jungkook. We need a car. There's one. Jungkook pointed toward a black sedan. Jimin shook his head. Too obvious. Then what? Jimin looked across the garage and noticed an old delivery van with its engine running. That. They climbed inside. Jimin drove through the security barrier before it fully opened, sending sparks into the rain. For several minutes, neither spoke. The city blurred around them, neon signs bleeding into puddles beneath the windshield. Jungkook stared at Jimin's hands on the steering wheel. Where are we going? Somewhere they can't find us. Does that place exist? Jimin gave a tired smile. It used to. Jungkook frowned. What does that mean? Jimin didn't answer. His eyes remained fixed on the road. After several minutes, Jungkook noticed something strange. Jimin kept touching the inside of his left sleeve. What's in there? Nothing. You keep checking it. Jimin's expression hardened. Forget it. Jungkook reached toward him. Jimin caught his wrist. Don't. The reaction was so immediate that Jungkook froze. Jimin released him. Sorry, what are you hiding? Something that can get you killed. Everything you hide gets me killed eventually. Jimin closed his eyes briefly. That's why I hid it. He pulled the van beneath an abandoned railway bridge and turned off the engine. Rain hammered the roof. Jimin reached into his sleeve and removed a tiny folded photograph. He handed it to Jungkook. Jungkook unfolded it slowly. His face went pale. The photograph showed Jimin standing beside a man Jungkook recognized immediately. That's impossible. Jimin said nothing. He's dead. That's what everyone believes. Jungkook stared at the photograph. Who is he? Jimin looked through the windshield. The man who ordered your parents' disappearance. Jungkook's breathing stopped. Jimin's voice dropped to a whisper. And the man who trained me to protect you. Jungkook looked at him in disbelief. Why would he protect me? Jimin's expression became unreadable. He didn't. Jimin started the engine again. He was protecting something inside you. Jungkook's blood ran cold. What? Jimin accelerated into the rain. That's the question I've been trying to answer for 6 months. Min stopped the car. Jungkook's voice was barely audible beneath the roar of rain against the windshield. Jimin kept driving. Jimin, I said, stop. Not here. Then tell me where we're going. Somewhere safe. Jungkook stared at the photograph still clutched in his hand. The dead man's face seemed to follow him through the darkness. You said he trained you to protect me. Yes. Why? Jimin's fingers tightened around the steering wheel. Because when we were children, he discovered something about you. What? I don't know. Jungkook laughed bitterly. You always say that, because it's true. Then what do you know? Jimin glanced at him. I know he spent years building a network around you without you realizing it. Teachers, doctors, drivers, friends, people you thought were strangers. Jungkook's expression slowly changed. And you, I was one of them. Since when? Since you were 17. Jungkook looked away, stunned. So every time you helped me, every time you stayed beside me. I was following orders. Silence. Then Jimin added quietly, at first. Jungkook looked back at him. And later, Jimin's eyes softened. Later, I stayed because I wanted to. The confession hung between them. Neither knew what to do with it. Jimin turned onto an unmarked road leading toward the mountains. The city disappeared behind them, replaced by dark trees and fog. After nearly an hour, they reached an abandoned roadside motel. Jimin parked beneath a broken sign. Stay here. You going? Inside. Together. Jungkook, I'm done being left behind. Jimin studied him for several seconds before nodding. Inside, the motel smelled of dust, wet wood, and old cigarettes. Jimin found a room with a working lock and pushed a chair against the door. Jungkook sat on the edge of the bed while Jimin cleaned the cut on his temple. Hold still. You're shaking. I'm not. You are. Jimin paused. I'm tired. Jungkook watched him carefully. When did you last sleep? I don't remember. Jimin, don't. You don't have to pretend with me anymore. Jimin's hands stopped. That's exactly what I have to do. Why? Because if I stop pretending, I might admit how scared I am. Jungkook's expression softened. What are you scared of? Jimin looked down at the bloodied cloth in his hand. Losing you. Jungkook didn't answer. Jimin continued cleaning the wound, but his fingers were gentler now. Do you remember the winter when you were 18? The year you gave me that blue scarf. You hated it. Jungkook smiled faintly. It was ugly. You wore it every day, because you looked happy when I wore it. Jimin's eyes flickered. You remember. I remember everything about you. The words made Jimin look away. Before either could say more, a soft electronic beep came from the table. Jimin froze. Jungkook noticed. What is that? Jimin reached for the recorder they had taken earlier. A red light was blinking. It wasn't activated before. He pressed the button. Static filled the room. Then a voice emerged. If you're hearing this, Jimin failed. Jimin went completely still. Jungkook recognized the voice from the building. Who is that? The recording continued. Jimin was never supposed to discover the truth. He was supposed to remain obedient, but he became attached to Jungkook. Jimin's breathing changed. Turn it off. Jungkook grabbed his wrist. No. The voice continued. The boy must never learn why he survived. Jungkook's eyes widened. What does that mean? Jimin knows the answer. He has known for years. Jimin reached for the recorder again, but Jungkook held it away. You knew, Jimin whispered, not everything. Enough, Jungkook, enough. Jungkook stood. You knew there was something about me and you still kept me in the dark, because knowing would have made you a target. I already am a target. Jungkook slammed the photograph onto the table. You don't get to decide what I deserve to know. Jimin's face tightened. You think I wanted any of this? I think you chose it. Yes, the answer stunned Jungkook. Jimin stepped closer. I chose to become someone you could hate. I chose to let everyone believe I betrayed you. I chose to let you think I was cruel, and I would choose it again. Why? Because the alternative was watching you die. Jungkook's eyes filled with tears. You don't know that. I do. Jimin pulled up his sleeve. Several scars crossed his forearm. These are from the first time I refused to give them information about you. Jungkook stared. Jimin rolled the sleeve higher. More scars appeared. These are from the second time. He stopped. The third time they stopped asking me questions and started asking you questions instead. Jungkook went pale. What did they do? Nothing. Jimin, they showed me photographs. Jimin's voice cracked. Photographs of you sleeping, walking, eating, laughing. They wanted me to understand that they could reach you whenever they wanted. Jungkook looked down. His hands trembled. So you became their monster. I became their monster so they wouldn't need another one. Suddenly the motel lights went out. Jimin grabbed Jungkook and pushed him against the wall. Outside an engine stopped. Doors opened. Footsteps approached through the rain. Jimin whispered, they're here. Jungkook looked toward the window. 3 silhouettes appeared behind the curtain, then a fourth. Jimin reached beneath the bed and pulled out a concealed weapon. There's a tunnel behind the bathroom mirror. How do you know? Because I built it. Jungkook stared at him. You built this place? Jimin nodded. 6 months ago. For us, Jimin looked at him. For the day I finally ran out of places to hide you. The door handle began to turn. Jimin grabbed Jungkook's hand. Whatever happens next, don't let go. The lock snapped. The door began to open. And from the other side came a voice Jimin had not heard since the night he first decided to become a villain. Jimin, the stranger whispered, bring Jungkook to me. Jimin, the voice whispered from the other side of the door, bring Jungkook to me. Jimin's fingers tightened around Jungkook's hand. For 1 second, neither moved. Then the door exploded inward. Jimin pushed Jungkook toward the bathroom. Now, they ran as bullets tore through the room, shredding the curtains and splintering the wooden walls. Jimin kicked the mirror aside, revealing a narrow black opening hidden behind it. Go, Jungkook climbed inside. Jimin followed and pulled the mirror back into place just as the attackers stormed the room. The tunnel was barely wide enough for their shoulders. It smelled of damp earth and rust. Jungkook could hear Jimin breathing behind him. You built this? Yes. How many exits? 3. Which one are we taking? The one they don't know about. How do you know they don't know? Jimin paused. Because I never told anyone. They crawled deeper. Behind them, a metallic crash echoed through the tunnel. Someone had discovered the entrance. Jimin, Jungkook whispered, they're following us. Keep moving. You said 3 exits. I lied. Jungkook stopped. What? There are only 2. Jimin, keep moving. Jungkook almost laughed despite the terror. You're impossible. You've known that for years. The sound of footsteps grew closer. Jimin suddenly pushed Jungkook through a narrow opening. They emerged beneath an abandoned train station. Moonlight spilled through broken glass above them. Jimin pulled Jungkook behind a concrete column. Don't make a sound. 4 armed men entered the tunnel. Jimin watched them carefully. His breathing slowed. Jungkook noticed the transformation. The frightened man disappeared. Jimin became cold, precise, almost emotionless. He waited until the first attacker stepped into the open, then moved. 1 strike, the weapon fell. Jimin caught it before it hit the floor. The second man fired. Jimin pulled Jungkook down and returned fire, forcing the attacker behind a pillar. The third man rushed forward. Jimin slammed him against the wall. The fourth escaped into the tunnel. Jimin, Jungkook shouted. Jimin turned. Stay here, I'm coming. No, I'm not letting you go alone. Jungkook, please, you said you wanted me to trust you. Jimin stared at him. Then trust me now. He disappeared into the tunnel. Seconds later, a single gunshot echoed. Jungkook's heart stopped. Jimin. He ran toward the sound. He found Jimin standing over the fallen attacker, blood dripping from his own shoulder. You're hurt. It's nothing. Jungkook grabbed him. Stop saying that. Jimin smiled faintly. You really hate that phrase, because you always use it when you're bleeding. Jungkook tore a strip from his shirt and pressed it against the wound. Jimin hissed. Sorry. You don't sound sorry. I'm trying. They sat beneath the broken station roof while dawn slowly approached. For a moment, everything was quiet. Jungkook looked at Jimin. Tell me about the man in the photograph. Jimin's expression darkened. His name was Han Seojun. He raised me. Jungkook stared. Raised you? After my parents died. Jimin's voice became distant. He taught me how to read people, how to disappear, how to lie without blinking, how to survive. And he taught you to protect me. He told me you were the most important person in his entire operation. Why? Jimin looked toward the horizon. Because your existence was connected to something he had spent 20 years searching for. What? A ledger. Jungkook frowned. A ledger. A physical record containing names, accounts, identities, and evidence of everything his organization had done. Jimin looked at him. The ledger disappeared the night your parents vanished. Jungkook's face went pale. You think my parents took it? I think they hid it. Where? Jimin's eyes settled on him. Inside something you have carried your entire life. Jungkook instinctively touched his necklace. Jimin noticed. That. Jungkook pulled the necklace from beneath his shirt. It was an old silver pendant, scratched and faded. My mother gave me this before she disappeared. I know. How? Jimin looked away. Because I was there. Jungkook froze. You were there that night? Yes. How old were you? 19. And you watched them take my parents. Jimin's eyes filled with regret. I tried to stop them. Did you? No. Jungkook stood abruptly. Then you knew. Jimin rose slowly. I knew they were going to kill your father. And you did nothing. I was ordered to protect you. You protected me while my parents died. Jimin's face crumpled. I was 19, Jungkook. I was terrified. Jungkook stared at him. Jimin continued. I tried to reach your father. He pushed me away. He told me to take you and run. You took me. Yes. Where? To a church 3 miles away. Jungkook's breathing became uneven. I remember someone carrying me. Jimin looked at him. That was me. Jungkook's eyes filled with tears. Memories surfaced in fragments. Rain, sirens, a trembling hand, a voice whispering that everything would be okay. It was you, Jungkook whispered. Jimin nodded. I stayed outside that church until morning. Jungkook covered his face. Why didn't you tell me? Because your father made me promise. What promise? Jimin's voice barely carried. That I would never tell you the truth unless you were ready to hear it. Jungkook lowered his hands. And now you're being hunted because the people who killed your parents think the ledger is still with you. Jungkook looked at the pendant. Then open it. Jimin shook his head. We can't. Why? Because it's not a pendant. Jimin reached toward it but stopped before touching it. It's a key. Before Jungkook could respond, the station's speakers suddenly crackled to life. A familiar voice filled the empty building. Very touching. Jimin went rigid. You found it sooner than I expected. Jungkook looked around. Who is that? Jimin's face lost all color. Seojun. A soft laugh echoed through the station. Hello, Jimin. Jimin stepped in front of Jungkook. Stay behind me. Seojun's voice answered from the darkness. You still do that. A figure appeared at the far end of the platform, older than the photograph, scarred and smiling calmly. You still put yourself between Jungkook and danger. Jimin raised his weapon. Stay away from him. Seojun smiled. You misunderstood everything, Jimin. He looked directly at Jungkook. I never wanted the ledger. Then his smile disappeared. I wanted what your parents hid inside it. Jungkook gripped the pendant. Seojun's eyes narrowed. And now that you found the key, you finally have something I can take from you. Jimin stepped forward. You'll have to go through me. Seojun smiled again. That's exactly what I was hoping you'd say. The first bullet struck the concrete inches from Jimin's shoulder, showering the platform with stone dust, and Jimin immediately shoved Jungkook behind a rusted pillar as the abandoned station erupted into gunfire. Stay down, Jimin shouted. Jimin, don't move. Seojun's men advanced through the foggy platform, their footsteps echoing beneath the broken roof, but Jimin moved faster, slipping between pillars and shadows as if he had memorized every inch of the station. Jungkook watched him disappear into the darkness, fear tightening his chest. He had seen Jimin fight before, but never like this. There was no hesitation in Jimin now. Every movement was controlled, efficient, almost terrifying. Yet beneath that cold precision, Jungkook could see something else, the desperate need to keep him alive. A gunman appeared behind Jungkook. Before Jungkook could turn, Jimin emerged from the darkness and knocked the weapon away. I told you to stay behind me. And I told you I'm not helpless. This isn't the time. It became the time when you decided to sacrifice yourself again. Jimin stared at him for a fraction of a second, then another shot forced them apart. Move, they ran toward an old maintenance carriage. Jimin pulled the door open and pushed Jungkook inside. Lock it. What about you? I'll be right behind you. Jimin, trust me. Jungkook hesitated, then closed the door. Through the narrow window, he watched Jimin run back toward the attackers. Seconds became an eternity. One man fell, another fled, then Jimin appeared, staggering toward the carriage. Blood darkened his shirt. Jungkook unlocked the door and pulled him inside. You're hurt again. It's a scratch. It's never a scratch. Jimin leaned against the wall, breathing heavily. You worry too much, and you don't worry enough. Jimin gave him a weak smile. I worry about one thing. Jungkook looked at him. What? The carriage suddenly began moving. Jungkook looked toward the front. You started the train. Emergency system. Jimin closed his eyes. It should take us to the old Eastern Tunnel. Should. I prefer not to promise things I can't guarantee. Jungkook sat beside him. You're still bleeding. I know. Jungkook pressed the fabric against his shoulder. Jimin winced. Sorry, you keep apologizing, because I keep hurting you. Jimin opened his eyes. That's not what I meant. I know. The train disappeared into darkness. For several minutes neither spoke. Then Jungkook pulled the pendant from his neck. Open it. Jimin stared at it. Not here. Why? Because if I'm right, opening it will activate something. Something dangerous. Something that will tell everyone exactly where we are. Jungkook frowned. Then why did Seojun want the key? Because he needs you to activate it. So I'm the key. No. Jimin reached toward Jungkook's hand. You're the lock. Jungkook stared at him. What does that mean? I don't know yet. Suddenly the pendant became warm in Jungkook's palm. Both men froze. A faint blue light appeared beneath its surface. Jimin's face changed. Put it down. Why, now? Jungkook dropped it onto the floor. The pendant projected a tiny image onto the metal wall. A woman appeared. Jungkook recognized her immediately. His mother, his breath caught. Mom, the recording began. Her voice was soft, trembling, but unmistakably real. If you're watching this, then my son has finally found the key. Jungkook covered his mouth. Jimin stood completely still. Jungkook, the recording continued. There is something you must know before you trust anyone. The image flickered. Your father and I did not disappear because we were hunted. We disappeared because we discovered the truth about the organization that was protecting you. Jungkook looked at Jimin. Protecting me. His mother's recorded voice continued. People around you were never random. Some protected you, some watched you, and one of them betrayed us. Jimin's expression tightened. No, he whispered. The recording continued. His name was Han Seojun. Jungkook's eyes widened. But there is another name you must remember. The image flickered again. A second photograph appeared. Jimin stared at it in horror. Jungkook looked between Jimin and the projection. Who is that? Jimin didn't answer. Jimin, his face had gone pale. That's impossible. Who is it? Jimin finally whispered. My father. Jungkook froze. The recording continued. Jimin's father was not merely part of the organization, he founded it. Jimin stepped backward as if struck. No, his voice cracked. My father died before I was old enough to remember him. The image showed a younger version of Jimin's father standing beside Seojun. He didn't die, Jungkook's mother said. He disappeared. Jimin's breathing became ragged. Why didn't Seojun tell me? The recording continued. Because Seojun needed Jimin to believe he had no family left. He needed Jimin loyal. He needed Jimin angry. He needed Jimin to become exactly what he was trained to become. Jungkook turned toward Jimin. A weapon. Jimin's eyes filled with tears. Yes. The train suddenly stopped. Every light went out. A deep mechanical click echoed from beneath the carriage. Jimin grabbed Jungkook and pulled him close. Don't move. A voice came through the speakers. You finally heard the truth, Jimin. Jimin stared at the ceiling. Seojun, your father is alive. Jimin's entire body froze. Where? Seojun laughed softly. Come and find him. Where is he? Where everything began. The speakers went silent. Then another voice came through. Older, weaker, familiar in a way Jimin could not explain. Jimin stopped breathing. Jungkook looked at him. You heard that? Jimin nodded slowly. Yes, the voice whispered again. My son. Jimin's weapon slipped from his hand. Dad. Dad? Jimin's voice broke the moment the word left his mouth, and the train seemed to become impossibly silent around him. Jungkook watched Jimin stare at the speaker as though the metal box had suddenly become a doorway to a childhood he had spent his entire life trying to forget. Jimin, the voice whispered again. If you can hear me, do not come looking for me. Jimin stepped toward the speaker. Where are you? It is not safe. Where are you? Jimin shouted. Static swallowed the answer. Jimin, listen to me. Seojin is not the person you should fear. The transmission cut out. Jimin stood frozen. Jungkook slowly approached him. Jimin, he's alive. Yes, my father is alive. Jimin laughed once, but there was no happiness in it. All these years, he pressed both hands against his face. All these years I thought he abandoned me. Jungkook touched his shoulder. Jimin immediately flinched. Don't. Jimin, I need to think. Then think with me. Jimin looked at him. His eyes were wet. You don't understand. Then make me understand. Jimin leaned against the wall. When I was a child, Seojin told me my father died because he was weak. He told me my mother couldn't survive without him. He told me I had no one. And you believed him. I had no reason not to. Jimin swallowed. He became my father. He taught me everything. Every time I failed, he reminded me that weakness had killed my family. But your father was alive. Apparently, Jimin looked at the pendant on the floor, and apparently he was involved in everything. Jungkook picked up the pendant. The blue light had disappeared. Then we find him. Jimin shook his head. No. Why? Because he told us not to. You just said he was the reason you became who you are. Exactly. Jimin looked at him. If my father's calling me now, he knows where I am. He knows you're with me. He knows the pendant is active. Then he can help us. Or he's leading us into a trap. Jungkook sighed. You see traps everywhere, because I've survived them. And I've survived you. Jimin almost smiled. Fair. The train suddenly jolted. Somewhere ahead, metal screamed against metal. Jimin grabbed Jungkook's arm. We're moving again. Nobody started it. I know. The train accelerated into the darkness. Jimin looked through the window. There was no driver cabin, no lights, nothing. This train isn't taking us somewhere, Jimin whispered. It's taking us to someone. The tunnel widened. Old lights flickered on one by one. At the end stood a massive underground facility hidden beneath the mountain. The train stopped. The doors opened automatically. Jimin stepped out first. Jungkook followed. The air smelled of oil, dust, and cold metal. On the wall was a symbol Jimin recognized immediately. This was Seojin's headquarters. You knew about this place. I thought it had been destroyed. They entered a vast chamber filled with old monitors. Most were dead, but one screen suddenly activated. A man appeared. He was older, his hair streaked with grey, his face thinner than Jimin remembered. Jimin stopped. Dad. The man looked directly at him, his eyes filled with tears. You became so much like me. Jimin's jaw tightened. Don't say that. I'm sorry. You don't get to apologize after disappearing for 20 years. I know. You let me believe you were dead. I was trying to keep you alive. That's what everyone says. Jimin's voice cracked. You Seojin, even me. His father lowered his eyes. I failed you. Jungkook stood silently behind Jimin. The older man noticed him. And you must be Jungkook. Jungkook stiffened. You know me. I've watched over you since the night your parents died. Jimin looked sharply at him. You were there. Yes. Then why didn't you save them? His father's expression collapsed. Because I wasn't allowed to. Jimin stared at him in disbelief. Not allowed. Your father had already discovered the ledger. Your parents were going to expose the organization. Seojin ordered their deaths. And you obeyed. I tried to stop him. But you didn't. No. Jimin looked away, tears slipping down his face. That's the truth I've been running from. His father continued. The ledger was never merely a list of names. It contained evidence of an experiment. Jungkook frowned. What experiment? An experiment designed to identify people who could access a classified network without technological authentication. Jimin looked confused. What does that have to do with Jungkook? His father looked directly at Jungkook. Everything. Jungkook stepped forward. Why me? Because your mother discovered that the network responded to your biometric signature. Silence. You were born with an unusual neurological pattern that allowed the system to recognize you. Jimin stared at Jungkook. That's why they protected him. Yes, and why they hunted him. Yes. Jungkook touched his head. I don't understand. His father continued. Your parents tried to destroy the network. They failed. Before they disappeared, they transferred the master access sequence into the pendant. Jungkook looked down at the silver pendant. Then why does it need me? Because only you can activate it. Jimin stepped closer to the screen. What happens if he does? His father's face became grave. The entire network becomes accessible. To whom? To whoever controls the system. Jimin's eyes narrowed. Seojin. Yes. Suddenly alarms erupted throughout the facility. Red lights flashed across the walls. His father's expression changed. They found you. Jimin reached for Jungkook. We need to go. His father shouted through the speaker. No, if you leave now, Seojin will intercept you. Then what do we do? Go to the central chamber. Jimin stared at him. That's where the network is. Exactly. Jungkook looked at Jimin. What happens there? Jimin's father answered before Jimin could. You will have to decide whether to destroy the network or control it. Jungkook's face went pale. And if I destroy it, every secret inside disappears. And if I control it, his father looked directly at Jimin. Then Jungkook will become the most powerful person in the organization. Jimin immediately shook his head. No, Jimin, no, I won't let them turn him into another weapon. His father looked at him sadly. Then you must finally stop protecting Jungkook by making decisions for him. Jimin fell silent. Jungkook reached for Jimin's hand. He's right. Jimin looked at him. What? You've spent your whole life deciding what I should know, where I should go, and what I should sacrifice. Jungkook squeezed his hand. This time we decide together. Jimin stared at him, then slowly nodded. They walked toward the central chamber. Behind them, the doors began closing one after another. Then the facility lights turned white. A massive screen illuminated above the chamber. Seojun appeared. He was smiling. Finally, he said, the two people I've been waiting for. Jimin stepped forward. It's over. Seojun laughed. No, Jimin. His smile widened. It's finally beginning. The central chamber opened beneath them like the inside of a machine. A circular room surrounded by towering glass panels and cables that disappeared into the darkness above, while a low electrical hum vibrated through the floor and made every breath feel strangely heavy. Seojun's face remained on the enormous screen. Jimin, he said calmly, you spent years trying to become a monster because you thought monsters could protect people. Jimin stood in front of Jungkook. And you spent years creating monsters because you were afraid of people who could think for themselves. Seojun smiled, still dramatic, still hiding. The smile vanished. You sound like your father. Jimin's eyes hardened. Don't mention him. Why? He finally told you the truth. He told me enough. Did he tell you what happened after your parents disappeared? Jungkook looked at Jimin. Jimin shook his head. Don't listen to him. Seojun continued. Did he tell you who gave me the order to hunt Jungkook? Jimin froze. Jungkook whispered, Jimin. Seojun's expression became almost sympathetic. Your beloved Jimin thinks he knows everything. Stop, but he doesn't know the most important part. Jimin stepped toward the screen. What did you do? Nothing. Seojun leaned closer to the camera. Your father did. The chamber fell silent. Jimin stared at the screen. That's a lie. Then ask him. Jimin's father's face appeared on a smaller monitor. His expression was devastated. Jimin, did you order the hunt? No. Did you give Seojun information about Jungkook? No. Seojun laughed. He didn't need to. Another file appeared on the screen, a document bearing Jimin's father's signature. Jimin stared at it. What is that? His father closed his eyes. A protection order. Protection order? Jungkook asked. Years ago, Jimin's father said, I authorized surveillance around Jungkook because I believed the organization would eventually come after him. Jimin shook his head. You authorized surveillance. I thought I could control it. You couldn't. No. Jimin's voice trembled. You couldn't. Seojun smiled. And when Jimin discovered the surveillance, he assumed you were in danger. Jungkook looked at Jimin. That's when you started protecting me. Jimin nodded slowly. Yes. Seojun continued, but Jimin made one mistake. He thought he could dismantle the organization from inside. Jimin looked at him. I almost did. You did something much more interesting. What? You became the perfect villain. Seojun's eyes narrowed. You betrayed Jungkook publicly. You stole the files. You delivered false information. You made everyone believe you were working for me. Jimin's expression remained cold, because I was protecting him. Yes, Seojun smiled. We're very convincing. Jungkook's eyes filled with tears. You knew. Seojun looked at him. I knew everything. Jungkook stepped forward. Then why let Jimin suffer? Seojun's smile disappeared. Because suffering makes people predictable. Jimin raised his weapon. Enough. Go ahead. Seojun's voice remained calm. Shoot the screen. Jimin's finger tightened around the trigger. You know I won't, because you're still afraid of becoming like me. Jimin lowered the weapon. Seojun smiled. Exactly. The central console suddenly activated. The silver pendant in Jungkook's hand began glowing. Jungkook, Jimin whispered. Don't touch it. Jungkook stared at the console. I think it's already touching me. A beam of light connected the pendant to the central system. Screens across the chamber activated simultaneously. Thousands of names appeared, accounts, locations, secret files. Every hidden operation Seojun's organization had conducted was now visible. Jimin's father stared at the screens. The ledger? Jungkook looked around. It's all here. Seojun's face became furious. Disconnect him. Men rushed into the chamber. Jimin moved instantly, intercepting them. The room exploded into chaos. Jungkook stood beside the console, trying to understand the system as files opened around him. Jimin, he turned. Jimin was fighting 3 men at once. Get out, Jungkook shouted. I'm not leaving. Jimin blocked a strike. Jungkook, please. No. Jungkook reached toward the console. A message appeared, access granted. Then another, master user identified. Jimin looked at him. What did you do? I don't know. The system spoke through the speakers. Master authorization confirmed. Every weapon in the chamber suddenly powered down. The attackers froze. Seojun's expression changed. Impossible. Jungkook stared at the screen. What? The system continued. Secondary authorization required. A name appeared. Jimin. Jimin's blood ran cold. No. Jungkook turned toward him. It needs you. Don't activate it. Why? Because if I authorize you, the system will recognize you as the permanent master user. Jungkook stared at the screen. Then you won't authorize me. Jimin nodded. Exactly. Seojin suddenly laughed. That's beautiful. Jimin turned toward him. What? You spent all these years protecting Jungkook by becoming the villain. Seojin's voice became almost gentle. And now the only way to save him is to trust him. Jimin looked at Jungkook. Jungkook's eyes were full of fear, but he didn't look away. Jimin, he whispered, I need you to trust me. Jimin slowly approached the console. Every step felt like surrendering a part of himself. He placed his hand beside Jungkook's. If this goes wrong, it won't. You don't know that, neither do you. Jimin smiled faintly. That's the first thing you've ever said that sounds like me. Their hands touched the console together. The system began counting down. 10, 9, 8. Seojin suddenly screamed, stop them. 7, 6, the doors locked. 5, 4. Jimin looked at Jungkook. Whatever happens, I'm sorry. Jungkook shook his head. Don't apologize. 3, 2, 1. The entire facility went dark. For several seconds there was nothing but silence. Then every screen illuminated with a single sentence. System transfer complete. Jimin stared at Jungkook. Did we do it? Jungkook slowly looked toward the main screen. Seojin was gone. His father's monitor was gone. Every weapon had powered down. The system seemed dead. Then a final message appeared. Welcome. Jungkook. Jimin's face changed. Jungkook looked at him. What? Jimin pointed at the screen. That's not the end. A second message appeared beneath the first. Primary owner Jungkook. Then after a pause another line appeared. Secondary owner Jimin. Jimin stared at the words. Jungkook slowly reached for his hand. Looks like you're stuck with me. Jimin laughed through tears. For the first time in years, the sound was real. But somewhere deep beneath the facility, an unseen door unlocked with a heavy metallic click, and a voice neither of them recognized whispered into the darkness. The heirs have finally returned. The metallic click beneath the facility echoed through the chamber, and Jimin's smile disappeared as quickly as it had appeared. Jungkook, step away from the console. Jungkook looked at him. Why? Because something just opened. The floor trembled, dust fell from the ceiling. Somewhere beneath them, massive machinery began moving after years of silence. Jimin grabbed Jungkook's hand. We are leaving. What about the system? Forget the system. But it belongs to me now. That's exactly why we need to leave. They ran toward the exit, but every door remained locked. The screens flickered. The words primary owner Jungkook disappeared, replaced by a map of the facility. A red marker appeared beneath them. Jimin stared at it. There's someone underground. Jungkook looked at the map. Who? I don't know. A voice suddenly came through the speakers. You really should have stayed away, Jimin. Jimin stopped. Who are you? The voice laughed softly. You don't remember me. Jimin's face tightened. I remember every person I've ever hurt. Then remember the first person you killed. Jungkook looked at Jimin. Jimin didn't answer. The voice continued. You were 19, a warehouse, 3 guards, 1 boy. Jimin's eyes widened. No, you were told to eliminate a witness. Stop, you pulled the trigger. Jungkook stared at him. Jimin, I didn't know who he was. Jimin's voice shook. I was told he was dangerous. The voice laughed. He wasn't dangerous, he was my son. Jimin's blood ran cold. Who are you? The man whose life you destroyed before you ever met Jungkook. A door opened at the far end of the chamber. An elderly man stepped into the light. He carried no weapon. His face was lined with scars and one eye was clouded. Jimin stared at him. You, the man smiled. Now you remember. Jungkook stepped closer to Jimin. Who is he? His name is Kang Diho. The man's smile widened. Dojin's former right hand. Jimin's expression hardened. You were supposed to be dead. So were you. Diho looked at Jungkook, and yet here we are. Jungkook stood beside Jimin. What do you want? The system. It's mine. No. Diho shook his head. You are merely the interface. He pointed toward the floor. The real system is beneath us. Jimin looked at the map. What is down there? The original archive. The ledger. Something older. Diho's voice became serious. The first record. Jungkook frowned. Record of what? Diho looked at Jimin. Your family. Jimin went still. My family. Your father didn't build the organization. Diho smiled. He inherited it. Jungkook looked at Jimin. And Seojin. Seojin was a servant. Jimin shook his head. You're lying. Ask your father. Diho gestured toward the screen. Jimin's father's image returned. He looked exhausted. Jimin, listen to him. You knew. I knew what the organization had become. Not what it was. Oh, Jimin's father looked toward Jungkook. Your families were connected long before either of you were born. Jungkook frowned. How? Your grandparents built the original network together. Jimin stared at the screen. Why? They believed the world needed a system capable of preventing wars before they began. Diho laughed bitterly. And then people realized such a system could control governments. Jimin looked at him. So they turned it into a weapon. Yes. Jungkook looked at the console. Parents tried to destroy it. They tried to expose it. Diho corrected him. Your mother discovered the system was predicting political movements, financial collapses, even individual behavior. Jungkook's face tightened. It could predict people, not perfectly. Diho looked at Jimin, but well enough to manipulate them. Jimin suddenly understood. That's why Seojin always knew what I would do. Exactly. He wasn't reading me. Diho nodded. He was predicting you. Jungkook looked at Jimin. Then all those times you thought you were choosing, some of them were choices they expected me to make. Jimin's expression became distant, but becoming your enemy wasn't one of them. Jungkook touched his arm. No, Jimin looked at him. That was the first thing I did that they couldn't predict. Diho's expression darkened, and that's why you're dangerous. Because I chose to protect him. Because you chose something the system could not understand. Jimin stepped forward. What? Love, the word hung in the chamber. Jungkook looked at Jimin, neither spoke. Diho continued, the system can predict fear, it can predict greed, it can predict revenge, but sacrifice without personal gain is difficult to calculate. Jimin's eyes narrowed, so that's why you kept trying to break me. Yes, and Seojin, he wanted you to become proof that love makes people weak. Jimin looked at Jungkook. He was wrong. Diho's expression changed. Was he? Suddenly the main doors opened. Armed soldiers flooded the chamber. Jimin pushed Jungkook behind him. Diho did not move. You brought them here. Of course. Why? Because I needed Jungkook to activate the system. Diho looked at the glowing console. And now that he has, the soldiers raised their weapons. I no longer need either of you. Jimin stepped forward. You'll have to kill me first. Diho smiled. That's the problem, Jimin. He pointed toward the screen. The system already calculated your next move. A prediction appeared. Jimin will sacrifice himself for Jungkook. Jimin stared at it, then another sentence appeared. Jungkook will allow him to die. Jungkook's eyes widened. That's not true. Diho smiled. Let's see. Jimin looked at Jungkook. Don't believe it. I don't. Good. Jimin reached for his weapon. Jungkook grabbed his hand. We don't follow their predictions. Jimin smiled. Together. Together, the lights suddenly turned red. The system began generating hundreds of possible outcomes. Every screen displayed the same words. Prediction failure. Prediction failure. Prediction failure. Diho's smile disappeared. What are you doing? Jungkook looked at Jimin. Making our own choice. Jimin nodded. Together they stepped forward. The prediction screens shattered one after another, filling the chamber with sparks and falling glass as Jimin and Jungkook stood side by side beneath the emergency lights. Diho stared at them in disbelief. You don't understand what you're destroying. Jimin raised his weapon. Maybe, Jungkook stepped forward, but we understand what we're choosing. Diho ordered his men to fire, yet before a single trigger could be pulled, every weapon in the room powered down. The system had already recognized its owners. Jimin looked at Jungkook. Did you do that? Jungkook shook his head. No. A final message appeared across the central screen. Choice cannot be predicted. The system began shutting itself down. Archives disappeared. Surveillance networks went dark. Secret accounts vanished. Every hidden mechanism that had controlled thousands of lives for decades was erased. Diho sank to his knees. You destroyed everything. Jungkook looked at him. No. We destroyed the thing that made people believe they had no choice. Jimin lowered his weapon. For the first time, he felt the weight of the past beginning to leave his shoulders. He looked toward the screen where his father's image remained. Dad, his father smiled sadly. You finally chose your own life. Jimin's eyes filled with tears. I spent years thinking I had to become a monster to protect him. His father nodded. And now, Jimin looked at Jungkook. Now I know I could have protected him without destroying myself. Jungkook reached for Jimin's hand. You don't have to be the villain anymore. Jimin squeezed his fingers. Neither do you. Together they walked out of the facility as dawn broke across the mountains. Outside, the rain had stopped. The sky was pale gold, and the cold morning air smelled of wet earth and pine. Behind them, the underground headquarters slowly went dark. Weeks passed. The accusations against Jimin eventually collapsed when the hidden records were recovered. Everyone learned that Jimin had never betrayed Jungkook. The betrayal had been a carefully constructed illusion. Jimin had deliberately allowed the world to hate him because hatred kept attention away from the person he was protecting. But the truth did not erase the damage. Some people apologized. Others remained ashamed that they had believed the worst. Jungkook never asked Jimin to forget those months. Instead, he stayed beside him while Jimin learned how to live without constantly looking over his shoulder. Some nights, Jimin still woke from nightmares. Sometimes he reached for the weapon that was no longer beneath his pillow. Sometimes he stood at the window before sunrise, unable to convince himself that peace was real. On those mornings, Jungkook would quietly appear beside him with 2 cups of coffee. You awake again? Jungkook would ask. Jimin would nod. Bad dream. Same one. Want to talk? Jimin would hesitate before answering. Not yet. Jungkook would simply sit beside him. He had finally learned that protecting someone did not always mean fixing their pain. Sometimes it meant staying until the pain became easier to carry. Months later, they returned to the old railway station where everything had begun. The broken roof had been repaired, the tracks were quiet, and sunlight poured through the windows. Jungkook held the old silver pendant in his palm. What should we do with it? Jimin looked at it for a long moment. Keep it. Why? Because it reminds me of what we survived. Jungkook smiled. I thought you'd want to destroy it. I wanted to. And now, Jimin looked at him. Now I think some memories deserve to stay. Jungkook slipped the pendant around his neck. Then we'll keep them. Jimin smiled. Together. They stood silently for a while. Then Jungkook asked the question he had carried for months. Do you regret it? Jimin looked at him. What? Becoming the bad person. Jimin thought about the lies, the accusations, the nights when Jungkook had looked at him with hatred, and the loneliness that had nearly destroyed him. I regret hurting you. He paused, but I don't regret choosing you. Jungkook's eyes softened. Even when I hated you, especially then. Why? Jimin smiled quietly. Because you were alive to hate me. Jungkook laughed through tears and pulled him into a long embrace. Jimin closed his eyes. No alarms, no weapons, no orders, no secrets. Just the steady warmth of another person who had chosen to stay. For years, everyone had believed Jimin was the villain in Jungkook's story. They had seen the lies, the betrayal, the cruelty, and the coldness, but they had never seen the nights Jimin spent protecting Jungkook from the shadows. They had never seen the scars beneath his sleeves or the fear behind his eyes. They had never understood that Jimin had deliberately destroyed his own reputation because he believed being hated was a smaller price than watching Jungkook die. But eventually, Jungkook learned the truth. Jimin had never betrayed him. Jimin had simply loved him in the most broken way he knew how. And perhaps that was the most painful lesson of all. Sometimes a person can become so determined to protect someone that they forget they deserve to be protected too. As the sun disappeared behind the mountains, Jungkook looked at Jimin and smiled. Let's go home. Jimin looked toward the golden horizon, then back at Jungkook. For the first time, the word did not frighten him. Okay. They walked away from the station together, leaving the old world behind them. The pendant rested quietly against Jungkook's chest. The secrets were gone. The organization was gone. The predictions were gone. And somewhere between the ruins of everything they had survived, Jimin finally understood that he did not need to be a monster anymore. He only needed to be Jimin. And for the first time in his life, that was enough.